Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host who was missing in action last week. I was trying to get educated, Dr. Kane, at the Florida Public Health Association Summit in Orlando, but I'm happy to be back this week. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in as usual. We appreciate you as we have a discussion tonight about building healthy minds and bodies for back to school success. Yes, it's that time of year. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane, before we bring in our guests?
I'm doing absolutely fine. I'm happy those guests who usually look forward to seeing your beautiful face still stuck with this ugly one and tuned in anyway. So
Oh, settle down, Dr. Kane. Listen. Well, we have two of our guests have been here before, but I believe that this is the first time that we've had Katrina Taylor on. And I will start with you since I called you out like that. How you doing this evening, Katrina? You're muted, so
All right, I am doing well. It is indeed an honor to stand before you today. I'm Katrina Taylor, and I'm the Director of School Behavioral Health for Duval County Public Schools. This is year 20 for me. I have a background
whoa,
in case management and school counseling and mental health therapy. So meeting the needs of the whole child is something that I hold very near and dear to my heart. So it's indeed an honor to be on here tonight. Thank you.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And Dr. Roll, I feel like you're a regular because I think I can't even count how many times you've been on here, but how are you doing this evening?
I am great. I'm glad to be here. Always happy to be available to educate the community and to partner with you all to get the word out.
Yeah, you've been doing your rounds, Dr. Roll. I think you were on Channel 4 or
Yep.
recently.
Yes. Yep. And Fox 30 coming up.
Okay, all righty, all right. Well, then that means that you're a trusted voice here in Northeast Florida. So we appreciate you and all that you do for children and families as a local pediatrician here in Northeast Florida. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Pope, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well, everyone. Just glad to be back. It is back to school, so we know what we're dealing with right now. Back to school rush and trying to get everything in order for all of our students for Duval County. So glad to be back, and I'm here for everyone.
we
Thank
have
you. And I,
another we have a few other national issues that are you guys are facing in terms of being our go-to experts on vaccinations, especially some issues that are taking place that we're concerned with. Some epidemics, or I won't say pandemics, some epidemics that are going around the country that we need to address. And I'm sure you guys are going to discuss that this evening.
yeah, I tell you what, it's just so much happening, and parents trying to juggle everything. I was listening to some folks and they were just saying different people were saying when school was starting for their child or their children. So if you live in Northeast Florida, there are multiple counties here, and so folks are starting at different times here in Duval County. I believe school starts next Monday. So teachers are back to school, and they have children too, right? So they have to not only ready themselves, but they have to also then ready their children. I want to ask one question of all, and any of you can chime in. What do you over the years, what have you recommended to parents when a school year is ending and they have the whole summer? Some parents are like, yeah, I don't have to get up, I don't have to haul children around, but what kind of recommendations do you make to parents to do during the summer? And as it nears closer to school starting, what do you tell them to do in terms of getting their child or children ready to get back on their schedule or routine for school? Anybody want to chime in on that one?
I'll go ahead and go. And you made a very important point. When parents, when the school year ends, the parents kind of become lackadaisical in reference to routines, and that's the one thing that you do not want to do. You want to maintain some type of structure throughout the summer. Rather, that means involving your child in a local summer camp, that they still have some chores, and so the teacher isn't having a difficult time from starting all over again, right? And so having some type of rituals and routines in the family can give that child consistency. The one thing that we recommend as a school district is the students read. So I know that a lot of our schools have summer reading that they provide families with throughout the summer, so students can maintain that academic consistency. But the main piece I would say that the parents need to do is to make sure that there's some rituals and routines throughout the summer, so the schools aren't starting at ground zero with students.
Yeah, and that's a good point in terms of reading, because if they haven't picked up a book since the last school year, they're gonna be behind the 8 ball, I think. Anyway, I don't have children, so I just have heard parents over the years, my friends, talk about that. I'll never forget one of my friends. She always said that when she started noticing that in her children when they were younger. So during the summer, she had them read a book a week, and she read the same book and talked to them about it. So although school is starting on Monday, Katrina, is there anything you would suggest to parents to do even these last few days leading up as far as reading is concerned, maybe?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, there's summer reading that's taking place that has been provided for all of our students in all of our schools. So they can definitely reach out to their local school to find out what those summer readings were, what are those books that was provided or advised for the students to read throughout the summer. I would also advise the parents to put their students in structure now. Like if they did not have a bedtime in the summer, let's start the bedtime now. So they're not arriving at school asleep and tired and fatigued because they stayed up on their video game all night. So at least this week, give the students a start in a sleep time and a wake up time. At least that gives them a couple of days to get back in the routine of when school starts on Monday.
Shoot, we even have to do that when we go on vacation, right? We have to come out of that vacation mode and like, oh my goodness, it's time to we no more staying up late and all of that. We have to reestablish ourselves as in terms of our routine. Dr. Rolla, Dr. Pope, what are the most important health checkups or screenings families should complete before school starts?
Some of the things that they should complete, one is, of course, their annual physical. And this is always one of the hot topics in trying to get into your pediatrician's office. One thing we like to try to tell everyone is you can either stay on a routine of the child's birthday so that you will not bump up against the school rush, or pick a time within the year to do the school physical so that it is current when it's time for school to start, if that school needs that school physical coming up. And as far as screenings, we're doing dental checkups, we're doing vision checkups, hearing checkups. We're also discussing nutrition. And like Ms. Taylor mentioned, sleep hygiene. So ensuring that, again, that there is a routine, ensuring that their physical checkup is up to date and in order, along with the immunization schedule per their age group.
Thank you. Dr. Roll, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, and other things we're looking at, some kids have mental health concerns and behavioral health concerns. And so things like depression, anxiety, we're continually screening for those things. And even though school hasn't started, still a good time to talk to your pediatrician about ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder and your concerns related to that. And because the survey or the screening involves not only asking the parent questions, but also the teacher questions. And so I have parents coming to me now who are talking about, and I say, okay, let's wait till after school starts. This is what I need you to do. Let's get prepared for that and go ahead and screen that child after school starts. But having those conversations around mental health and anything that might impact sleep, such as snoring and other issues, poor nutrition, and all those things, and talking to parents about that is important. But it's important that they see their primary care physician or nurse practitioner so that they can get the appropriate screenings and have the appropriate conversations.
And Katrina, thank you, Dr. Rowe, what are some common emotional or behavioral signs that a child may be struggling with the back to school transition?
So you'll typically see the sleep, they'll sleep in more. The students are a little withdrawn, and some of those symptoms that Dr. Roll just spoke about that indicate some type of depression. You'll notice that they're very anxious in some cases about going to school, especially our younger kids. My little one is starting school in August, and it's typical for maybe the first day of school, a student to begin to cry because they're being pulled away from that parent, that loving home. But when you see it's ongoing, where that child is consistently crying every single day for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time, then that's something that we need to refer that child to the pediatrician for them to assess what are some possible mental health concerns regarding that student. So I think there's a fine line between what is typical behavior that we see when students don't want to come to school. With our secondary students, they may be like, okay, I don't want to go to school, have a little attitude. That's normal. But when we see that they're withdrawn, not want to hang around family and friends, not want to engage in their schoolwork, they make poor decisions, they're skipping. So some of those deviant behaviors we start to see, then those are all indicators that we need to get the child screened for some type of mental health concern.
Yeah, I remember when I was transitioning from middle to high school, I was getting a little nervous, right? I'm like, because it was much older kids there, right? I was coming in as a 9th grader, I believe it was, and there were 11th and 12th graders. It was a little unnerving for me. Believe it or not, I was very shy and not talkative. I know you all find that hard to believe, but Dr. Pope, you don't have to look like that. It's true. Dr. Rolla, Dr. Pope, what are the common physical health issues you see increase when school resumes, and how can parents prevent them?
So we can see sports related injuries. Some of the kids are conditioning throughout the school year, but others are not, or this may be their first time participating in organized sports. And so sports injuries can be fairly common, especially if they don't know proper techniques for play or for stretching and things of that nature. And so we do see quite a bit of that. We have a pretty robust athletic program here in this city. And so a lot of kids are engaged in sporting activities. And so if they haven't been conditioning themselves throughout the summer, they can easily get injuries throughout the school year.
Thank you.
And also to tag on to that, now we may not just be in an area with just our family or our close-knit friends. Now we are back into the school area, or like Dr. Rose said, the football team or the cheerleading squad. So now we have a lot of engagement with other people that carry different type of infections and germs. So you're going to have an increase in respiratory illnesses, maybe even different skin rashes or conditions that may affect the timing that the kids are going to school. So they may start becoming absent or being absent from school. It's going to affect homework and sleep habits, anything of that nature, or anything that's going to cause the child to be removed from the school setting will potentially be a problem as well. So respiratory illnesses is a high instance of infection.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Kane, I have to bring you in because as the family practice physician, do you see parents who have little ones that may have some anxiety or start getting stressed out about, oh, it's that time of year again, I got to take my child to school, or even those grandparents who might be raising their children? Do you ever, I know you always talk about having a geriatric practice, but.
Well, yeah, I do have geriatric practice. I do see or hear from those parents and grandparents that may have kids, but I refer them to, those specialists, the pediatric specialists, the pediatricians like Dr. Roll and Dr. Pope, and especially when it comes down to some of these parents whom I don't care how early we encourage them to get their school physicals and school vaccinations up to date, we still run into those guys who are at the last minute, hadn't done it, and they're at risk of those kids not being able to attend school. And I wanted to ask Dr. Roll and Dr. Pope, either one of them or both, any suggestion as how those parents in this last week that we have, in less than a week now, how they can do any catch up, and not the fruit. How they can do any catch up in terms of getting those vaccinations done or the physical exams that are needed.
Especially when they're not encouraged. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to go there. I apologize.
So while it is our preference always that they be seen by their pediatrician, there are other options in the community because, of course, most of us are booked out for some weeks now. Certainly, their first stop is going to be their local pediatrician. But the next stop would be something like Ascension Urgent Care is offering school physicals for a set fee. And there are other entities around the city that are doing so. There are mobile units in the city that are going around the city offering school physicals. Ascension also has a mobile unit that goes out. And so those are certainly options for those families who can't get in to their usual primary care physician or nurse practitioner. But definitely their first stop should be their primary care medical home, because we always want them to be seen there, because it's more than just about the physical. It is about the conversations. It's about the relationship. It's about the advice that you get. And so some parents just tend to focus on that physical exam or that clearance for sports, but it's really a relationship thing. You want to be in a relationship with a physician or nurse practitioner that understands your child and can address all of your issues adequately.
And Dr. Pope, I see you want to add something, but I want to say this, Dr. Roll. Ladies or parents will go to the same barber or hairstylist for consistency, right? And to me, as you were talking, it made me think of that. We need to think the same way when it comes to taking your children in for physicals or vaccinations or whatever. Let them go to someone, a doctor who they are familiar with. Go ahead, Dr. Pope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I piggyback off of you, Jocelyn, and Dr. Roll, very much so with finding that primary care physician or nurse practitioner or physician assistant that is going to take care of the child the way that they need to be taken care of. We tend to learn our patients very, very well and how to deal with them, when they can come. So some things that we do is throughout the year when they come for illnesses or follow-up visits for other reasons, we make sure that we check those electronic health record to see when their last physical was done, so that we can give that little nudge or that little push. Oh, it's coming around the corner. School is in 4 months, so you don't want to back up to the rush. So why don't you go ahead and schedule now? And that way we can get you in, and that will be taken care of. Like Dr. Rose said, there are mobile units, there are urgent care centers that will do physicals and sports physicals around the city for a nominal fee. But for the next, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 weeks, there are also several organizations and churches who are doing back to school events where they have practitioners or physicians that will come out and do some school physicals, some sports physicals, and also they have nurses or other teams that will provide immunizations as well.
Yeah, and Katrina, a lot of kids go to school with all sorts of medical issues, but let's talk about those children who have IEPs, or who may have some traumatic issues that may have happened to them. How can we be more attentive to the unique mental health needs of children with IEPs or behavioral challenges?
That's a very good question. As we think about those students, and those are two separate types of students, right? And because a student can have an IEP for multiple reasons, not necessarily behavior reasons. We have students that have IEPs because they're lack of focus, or a student that has an IEP because they can't regulate. And then you have some students with behavior challenges that have IEPs. The good thing about an individualized exceptional plan is that a student with an IEP, there are certain accommodations by law that schools have to adhere to. And so when a parent sits down with the IEP team, or we call the MRT team, they develop what those accommodations need to be to best meet the needs of that child's academic success. And so that they already have that in place for our students that have IEPs. Those are updated annually with families. And the one thing, the parent does have the right to state what accommodations they want for their child in order for their child to be successful academically. The other piece in reference to students that have behavioral challenge, in Duval County Public Schools, all of our students have access to mental health counselors. Every single one of our students. All of our students have access to school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, and we have a partnership through United Way of Northeast Florida and the city called Full Service Schools. So all of our schools have access to a mental health counselor. It does require parental consent. All the parent needs to do, if they're interested, is to refer their child. They can go through the school counselor to do that. It costs nothing. Let me say that right now. It is free 99. So it costs nothing for your child to receive mental health counseling in the walls of the school. And that therapist is trained, and they're able to provide up to 6 months of counseling for that student. And again, at no cost to the parent at all. So on the IEP side, we have the accommodations that's written into that law, that legal document, but also the parent has the right to refer their child for mental health counseling through the schools at no cost to them. So we're doing what we can, because we understand that when a student comes to school with academic and behavioral challenges, and if we don't meet that need, then our students aren't going to perform academically. And so we have to remove those barriers that our students are experiencing so they can perform academically.
Yeah, we actually partnered. When I say we, I work at the Partnership for Child Health, and we actually partnered with you on a mental health summit for youth at a couple of your high schools. And I was just blown away how those young people have their own way of wanting adults to communicate with them, right? And to hear them. We think one way, or we want to talk to them another way, but they're people too. They just happen to be little people, younger people, right? And so really to acknowledge that. Do you find that there are parents who are hesitant, though, about seeking mental health counseling for their children?
Absolutely. For multiple reasons. We have cultural reasons, we have spiritual reasons. And a parent has that right? They have the right. And sometimes it's that parent's own trauma, is their inability to trust anybody outside of their family dynamic to get in their business, right? And so when you have a child that is speaking with someone, and some things about the home may come up in those conversations, some families, they're not ready for that, right? And so the way that I try to explain it to families in layman's terms is, if you're sick, where do you go?
To the doctor.
If you have a headache, what do you take? Right? And so the same way that we meet the needs of our physical health concerns, when we're not feeling well, we go to the ER. When we're not feeling well, we call the doctor or get on Teladoc to meet those needs. So why don't we do the same for our brain? Our brain is the largest organ in the body, right? And if our brain isn't operating the way that it needs to be, then it impacts our physical. So our physical does impact our mental, and our mental impacts our physical. It's one big dynamic in our family. So we do get some parents, regardless of how we advocate for the parents, they still would not consent. I will let you know nationally, about 20 to 25% of students that show concerns of mental health conditions receive services. So we have nationally, that's like 75% students do not get the care that they need. In Duval County, with our relationship through United Way and Kids Hope Alliance, we're at about 65% of our students that have mental health concerns that are referred, they receive the counseling. So we're higher than the national average, but to think about the 30 to 35% that aren't getting it, they're not getting it, that is disheartening, because oftentimes those are our students that really need it the most.
Yeah, we've been doing some work. Fortunately, when I say we, again, Partnership for Child Health, we received some funding from SAMHSA to work in communities with children and their families who have experienced stress and trauma. And working with this particular program, I've just seen firsthand how people are really dealing with some things and have a hard time seeking care. And so for so many different nonprofit organizations, I think it does take a village, right? You look at the pediatricians who can also encourage parents, and I'm going to let you chime in, Dr. Pope, and looking at your department and the full service schools, and just everybody chiming in from different organizations, really rallying around that child really helps. And we haven't even talked about those children who are in foster care that may be showing up at school. Dr. Pope, did you want to chime in?
Yes, I wanted to say one thing that I have found very helpful for families is not to always wait until a problem occurs.
Yeah.
So what I've realized is once you get into that preteen area, that's when we kind of start seeing the behavioral problems or mental health problems starting to creep in. And so before there is an actual issue or problem that the parent or the child brings to you, what we have begun to do at the Florida Department of Health is to offer behavioral health services. And basically how we put it is, hey, there's adjustments that are needed. There are challenges that arise. There are coping skills that may need to occur or be learned, because we're going from a young boy, a young girl, into middle school, into different organizations, into different sports. They're maturing. They're wanting to get their independency and start becoming independent in different areas and make different decisions. So what I started doing was saying, hey, here at the Florida Department of Health, we have a public health infrastructure grant that we have utilized to bring on mental health specialists that are offered to all of our clients and our patients. And if you want, you can get this counseling now. So if there is a problem that occurs, you are already in the system and with a counselor that you feel comfortable with. And now you may feel even better speaking with them about the issue or the problem that occurs later on in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a question about immunizations and even IEPs, immunizations, and Katrina, I'm going to start with you because I wanted to ask: are vaccinations mandated for all schools, regardless of whether or not it's a charter school versus a public schools, or they're just not mandated like they used to be anymore?
So I can't speak for charter. because
Okay.
Duval County and charter schools are two different
Okay.
entities.
Okay.
But I will say there are certain vaccinations for individuals that would like to know what those specific vaccinations are. They can go to the Duval County website under nursing services, and it outlines exactly what vaccinations are needed. However, there's an exemptions form. So if some parents, they do not want vaccinations for whatever reason. There are medical and religious exemptions that they can go through that's accepted per Florida law. But I can't go through what the specifics. I'm sure probably Dr. Roll or Dr. Pope can go over what the specific vaccinations are, but there are certain vaccinations that I know of that are needed before enrollment. But the parents do have the opportunity to opt out of those if they complete an exemptions form.
So from a public health standpoint, of course, we're very pro-vaccine, particularly as pediatricians, but we do recognize parents' rights to choose. And a lot of our parents are opting out of vaccines. And if you look at social media and other things that parents indulge in, they're getting a lot of information that is not necessarily true, a lot of fear mongering, and so it creates doubt in their mind. And so we certainly understand their concerns. We try to work with parents to help them understand the risk associated with not vaccinating. However, if they choose not to, they can get a religious exemption through the Florida Department of Health. Medical exemptions are available for those who've actually had a reaction to a vaccine that has been documented by their primary care provider. And so it is important that parents understand the distinction between those. For kindergarten entry, there are certain vaccines that are required, and also VPK. So those are generally offered at 4 years old, at the latest at 5 years old. And so things like diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenza B, and I'm calling out a lot of names that most people are not familiar with, but they can certainly look it up. Pneumococcal vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox. I'm sure folks understand those words. But a lot of these vaccines are offered in combination, not single, if a parent desires individual shots, some of them are available as individual shots, but in general, they're given as combination vaccines. And then for 7th grade entry here in the state of Florida, tetanus is required. However, it is recommended at 11 years old across the country. Florida has chosen 7th grade entry as the kind of stopgap there to ensure that they get that tetanus shot. And then certainly we offer the meningitis shot to those children at 11 years old. And we must not forget about our college age students. Sometimes parents forget about them. There are 2 different meningitis shots that are available for those students, and they are encouraged to get those as well. But certainly there are various vaccines, and we always encourage parents to have that conversation at your child's well visit about those vaccines. Discuss your concerns. A lot of times we can provide you the information you need to make a decision. Without you going off of whatever the latest thing is that you've heard. And there is a lot of information out there that can be very scary to parents, but certainly the disease is just as scary. And I think one of the things about public health, we worked our way out of not worked our way out of a job, but we've done such a great job that folks don't believe these diseases are real anymore.
Yeah. Because
they don't see them. And so it doesn't have the same impact as opposed to when you've seen someone with polio, or you yourself have lived through mumps and maybe have hearing loss at this late in life and things of that nature. And so certainly these are things that are still deadly, still circulate naturally in the environment and still are worth us being concerned about.
Are flu shots and COVID vaccines, are those mandatory or those are optional for children to go back to school? Or just recommended in general for children?
Both of those vaccines are optional, so it is the parent's choice. And of course, we always encourage vaccinations that are going to help to mitigate any type of spread of any kind of disease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are we seeing what are we seeing in terms of? I know there's an epidemic that we're seeing in terms of pertussis. Are we seeing anything here in in Florida? And what about even when it's not kids, who are we recommending to get added pertussis protection?
So yes, pertussis is alive and well, and so we do recommend for our younger kids, what we call DTaP, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine, and for our 11-year-olds, Tdap, which is big T, little pertussis, P, and for our pregnant moms and dads, really, the Tdap vaccine to not only protect themselves against tetanus, but also protect themselves against pertussis and to protect their newborn babies. Sometimes people don't think about those who cannot be vaccinated. Vaccines are not just for your protection, but for those who cannot be vaccinated, such as your newborns or those who are immunocompromised. And so, I find that we're starting to think less and less about that as we individualize things and think just about ourselves in terms of vaccines. But yes, that it is still important that we get vaccinated against pertussis.
Including grandparents.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, I coach parents on that as well. That ask grandma, grandpa have they had their Tdap, not just the tetanus shot, but Tdap with the pertussis attached to the tetanus. And so we encourage that as well, because usually if the baby's going to get it, they're getting it from the parents or the grandparents.
Right.
But tetanus is every 10 years still, Dr. Rowe?
Yes.
Or Dr. Kane?
Yeah, and there's some exceptions to that, but in general, every 10 years.
So let's talk about hydration. As I was sitting here drinking my water, how do hydration and nutrition affect learning behavior and energy in children?
Especially with what we're looking at with this huge heat wave that we're having. Are there any preparations to make sure, back when we were coming along, sometimes our air conditioning went out. Dr. Pope, you may have some input into that, being in the health department right now, and in preparations for those types of things, much like you do with hurricanes and the rest of that, pre-planning. What are we looking at as far as making sure that should a school or some institution, public institution like a school, wind up having air conditioning out, what do we do to help protect our children from getting these?
So some of the things that the city of Jacksonville has done, which I thought was brilliant, was utilizing our transportation system. So JTA, same way we would do at a Jumbo Shrimp game or a Jacksonville Jaguars game, they have what they call cooling stations. And they will utilize those buses and come out to certain areas to provide cooling stations for that. So a lot of times we have good partnerships with different organizations in our city. And the city of Jacksonville has done a great job with partnering with the Duval County public school system.
Katrina, parents deal with so much. I mean, we're asking them, Dr. Rowland, Dr. Pope, and Dr. Kane, telling them all this other stuff that they need to do. What are some things parents can model, or how can caregivers or parents model healthy stress management for their children? I mean, if the kids see the parents all frazzled, then, obviously then those children might pick up on that same energy. But what can they do to really try to hold it together, especially in front of their children?
Oftentimes I tell parents, and we've heard this before ourselves, that don't discipline when angry. Don't discipline when upset. Take a moment, get your bearings, go back and have a conversation. I think the fact of the matter is parents have to focus on communication, especially with our secondary students. We see it time and time again with our secondary students where there's not healthy communication between that student and their parent. And oftentimes we also tell parents what you pay attention to is what you get more of. So if you're paying more attention to that negative behavior, and attention can be taking the phone away. Attention may be spanking. Attention, it may be all of these negative things. However, if you're focusing more on those negative things and not on the positive, then you're going to continue to get those negative behaviors. The other thing that oftentimes I tell parents is be mindful of how you respond on a day-to-day in reference to interactions with other people around you, your mate, your family, your student, because students are watching you and they're paying more attention
Yeah.
to what you do more
Mhm.
so than what you say. And because a lot of times those things, the two things are contradictory. So those are the two things that we try to explain to parents. And I also tell parents it's okay to not be okay. So as a parent, you have to recognize when you are not mentally stable enough to really respond in a way that's loving and empathic to your child. And it's okay if you have to get the appropriate support yourself as a parent. So it's very important for them to recognize that when they need to reach out and ask for help, to get that help. And also it's okay for you to engage in family counseling and family therapy. Those are things that we want to make sure that we pay attention to. So recognize when you're not okay, reach out when you need the appropriate support. What you pay attention to is what you get more of, and students pay more attention to what you do more so than what you say.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I know if you're a younger person, younger parent, you might want to boots on the ground or twerk or whatever your thing is, but you really have to be careful the things that you expose your children to. There was a question, by the way, and we'll come back to that, Katrina, but there was a question about HPV vaccine. Dr. Rolla, Dr. Pope, would either of you like to chime in on that?
Yes, HPV vaccine is the human papillomavirus vaccine. If one of the questions is it mandatory for school? It is not one of the mandatory school vaccinations. However, it can be offered as early as 9 years of age. And we start to talk about it around 9 years of age to provide at that 11-year-old visit when we give the tetanus as well as that first meningitis shot. However, this vaccine helps to protect against a virus that can affect or cause cervical cancer, anal cancers, vocal paralysis due to nodules on the throat. It also can cause some forms of testicular cancer. So having that vaccine is actually very beneficial for individuals to help protect against those type of cancers and throat issues.
Yeah, I know a few months ago we had the American Cancer Society on doing a study about cancer and from younger women on up to age 50. I missed the cutoff. I was too old, but and I'm glad that they're doing it because people from various angles are showing that diseases are showing up at different stages of life, right? Like cancer, for example. And if people are able to enroll in these studies, then they're just having conversations. They're not poking, prodding, or taking blood or giving you medicine or anything. They just want to follow you throughout your life and see what your risk factors are. We've talked a lot about environmental risk factors. We've talked about the social determinants of health. There are so many things that influence health. And so to have various folks come on and have those conversations is very important. Dr. Kane, you unmuted. Do you want to say something?
Well, what I wanted to make sure, I'm happy that Dr. Pope mentioned testicular cancer because it brought men into focus, boys into focus, because I want to make sure they understand this is not just a woman's issue. It affects both sexes, male and female. You can just thinking that, okay, I'm not having sex, but I am, for lack of a better description, having oral sex with someone, that you can get throat cancer as well as penile cancer from that HPV, from that human papillomavirus. So I just want to make sure that our male listeners and that and the parents that are listening make sure their sons as well as their daughters understand that it goes both ways. It's not just a female issue.
Yeah, I was sad to hear what Deion Sanders is going through, but what I like about Deion Sanders he's very public about what he's dealing with. And hopefully him being open and honest will encourage other males to take care of themselves and not be ashamed. Because ladies, we talk to each other about what's happening with us, right? We're very vocal about it, but you're right, guys don't tend to be. One of you brought up, and Katrina, I don't know if it were you or whatever, but allowing cell phones in school is something that's not gonna be allowed this year. But not just talking about cell phones, but let's just talk about screen time to help parents understand the importance of limiting screen time with their children. As you talked about earlier, all of you talked about preparing your children to start back with the school year. And a part of that is including backing up off of the computer, the tablet, the video games, the cell phone, whatever. Let's have a little conversation, if you all will, about that. And Katrina, I'd like for you to start and talk about who is not allowed to have cell phones at school this school year. Has that started, or is that starting this school year?
Still developing, right? But we
Okay.
do know our elementary kiddos, the cell phone usage is still there is a certain ruling that's coming down in reference to the use of cell phone during the school day. That's something we've always had in our code of conduct, that students should keep those cell phones out of view. They shouldn't be in open view during instructional time. And so that's something we've always had in our student code of conduct, because there are a lot of things that's happening on cell phones. And our adolescents, they're dropping photos, they're dropping videos. I know you guys heard of AirDrop. They're and it can be extremely embarrassing for students, and it's a form of bullying when they're dropping videos and pictures of other students. So we've seen things with cell phone usage happen outside the walls of the school. However, when it reaches the inside of the school, that still does lead to disciplinary infraction. So there are some consequences in reference to a cell phone that students still have to adhere to if it does fall within the walls of the school, even though the incident may have fallen outside the walls of the school. So we have very strict policy in reference to our student code of conduct and reference to cell phone usage during the school day. We know that with our students, and I don't personally like when elementary students have cell phones for whatever reason. Parents allow elementary students with cell phones. There is a direct link between depression, low self-esteem, anxiety, and cell phone usage, specifically when we're talking about social media. And so a lot of times, if you're not with your students 100% of the day, you can't really monitor exactly what they're searching on the World Wide Web. It's a very dangerous place to be for a child that has an underdeveloped brain. And a lot of our kids are just not mature enough to navigate that in the real world. So, we want to make sure that our students are focused when they're in school. However, when they are on their cell phones excessively, they're not able to focus or pay attention. We also see that our students, if they use the cell phone and they take it to bed with them, they're on the cell phone at night. So even their sleep quality or sleep hygiene, that Dr. Pope said, is limited because they're going to sleep with the cell phone. So those are a lot of things that we see that prevents students from being successful in school, and how that does impact our students when there's excessive cell phone usage in our schools.
Yeah, there's an initiative locally, actually it's national, Project One Health, and we have a Project One Health here in Jacksonville. And it's sad when we are having conversations, Dr. Rowland, Dr. Pope, about asking pediatricians, can you prescribe being outdoors with the children? Tell the parents to, get their kids off of the video game and the tablet and prescribe an hour, a couple hours or something a week. I saw a funny cartoon. I reposted it on Facebook where it said, remember when your parents didn't care when they put you out the house and you were out all day long, and long as you came back in the house before dark, right? Because what they were doing is encouraging you to be outside. It's sad that that we have to rely on programs, initiatives to encourage folks to get outside more. I watched a video of a young girl whose doctor, she was experiencing so much anxiety that her doctor said, get out 1 hour a week. Just go outside. They had a hammock in her yard. Lay on the hammock and just enjoy nature, right? And no cell phone, nothing. Just get out. And she started enjoying it so much based on the doctor prescribing that then she just started doing it all the time. So Dr. Rolla, Dr. Pope, have you ever written any prescriptions for encouraging parents to make their children go outside and unplug from those video games and television and so on and so forth?
So I certainly have had conversations with parents about that. And much of it is, I think, also based on the parental structure, the family structure to some extent, right? A lot of the patients I currently see where I practice, their kids are very engaged in sports. They are always outside the house. They're at the beach all the time. They have a swimming pool. They are very active. But when you live in neighborhoods where maybe the crime is higher, or there's some dangers, some inherent dangers in the environment, it becomes more difficult, and parents have more concern about their children being outside. Also, if the parents are working all the time, they don't want their kids to be outside of the home. And so the kids are sometimes having to fend for themselves during the day. And so I think the family structure also contributes a lot. And also kids do what they see. They model their parents' behavior, whether the parents realize that or not. So if they see a parents on the phone all the time, or the parents are not engaging them in conversation, or they spend a lot of time on social media, the children often adopt those behaviors. And so really it takes a family, it takes a whole village. When we talk about, we forget, most of us didn't raise ourselves. None of us raised ourselves. We had parents, but our parents also had a village. They had friends, uncles, aunties, grandmas, grandpas, those types of folks engaged in our lives so that we stayed busy. We stayed engaged in outdoor activities. Now we don't have that so much. And so we have to get back to that. And so it's important to continue to have those conversations with families.
I'm just talking, having a whole conversation with myself. And we have good weather here in Florida that we're experiencing some excessive heat, but just in general throughout the school year, as it starts to get cooler, we do have a lot of opportunity to be outdoors versus in some of our northern states that have to deal with snow and other different types of weather. And getting back to school is very complex. Katrina, we didn't talk about gangs and bullying. We touched a little bit on bullying, but parents just have a hard time, some parents rather, sending their children to school not feeling that it's not a safe environment. What kind of encouragement can you give parents to, and I know you're not a school resource officer or a police officer or anything like that, but what are some things that the district has in place so that parents can feel that the schools are a safe environment for their students while they're in the school building?
So Florida schools are one of the safest schools in the nation because of what happened in Parkland, Florida on February 14, 2018. Because of the incident that occurred at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, there was state statute put into place where all schools have to have a guardian in their building at all times. When students are there, they have to. So what does that look like? That can either be a school police, that can be a school safety officer, which is an armed guardian, or that's JSO. So there are no schools in Duval County, Duval County Public Schools, I can speak to Duval County Public Schools, that are not provided an armed officer in their building, right? And that's per Florida statute. So rest assured, the safest place that students can be is in the school. So that's oftentimes what we say to parents because of what happened in Parkland. The other piece is our students do a really amazing job of when they see something, say something, report it. right? And so we have a hotline that students can call. We have a text line that students can text. And believe it or not, they report if someone has a gun or someone's looking suspicious, and students tell. They will tell. And so we have that available to them in the event that they don't feel safe. The other things I want parents to be mindful of is all school board staff members have what's called a Centegix badge. And you're probably wondering, what is that? What is a Centegix badge? And so it is a badge that all school employees have. So when there is a safety concern in their school building, that school employee can press that badge 3 times, and law enforcement is immediately routed to the exact location of where that happened, where the incident is occurring. And so that's called a Centegix badge. So there are so many parameters that the state and the school districts put into place to ensure that our students are safe. Not to mention, when you go in some of our schools, our secondary campuses, we also have where they walk through a metal detector, right? Not only that, if you go into our schools, you'll see build outs. You'll see build outs in some of our front offices where parents, they used to just go into the main office and they have access to everything. You'll notice when you go into a lot of our buildings, they have to go through a gated or boarded entry before they receive access to the main entrance of the school. So there are so many parameters in place to ensure that our students are safe.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what about Dr. Rolla, Dr. Pope? I want to switch up to this question real quick. As parents start preparing for their children to go back to school, are there any standard number of hours that children should sleep? Like if I'm a high schooler versus a middle schooler versus elementary, how many hours of sleep should parents put their little ones to bed to make sure they get a sufficient amount of hours and not show up at school sleepy and tired?
So, go ahead.
Yes, of course. Just as you said, elementary to middle to high school, it starts decreasing from there. So typically when we're thinking about those toddlers to elementary school students, we're asking the parents to try to attempt to have them to get at least 10 hours of sleep at night. And then once they start getting into that preteen, teenage years, then it's kind of leveling off, excuse me, to what we say as far as adults, at least 8 hours. But still, if they can get that 8 to 9 going towards 10 hours of sleep at night, that will get that child refreshed. It will rejuvenate the brain to be ready for learning and encouraging acceptance of knowledge throughout the school day, along with getting that nutrition and low screen time. Although we do know that screen time way elevated than, you know, what the American Academy of Pediatrics would like. But hey, this is the world we live in. We are doing our schoolwork on the computer. We are studying on the computer. We are reading our books, and our note taking and everything is on a computer. So a new update that the AAP has stated was, if you can not be in front of a screen for at least 3 hours. So during dinner time, so you can have that sit down family talk and conversation, doing that 1 hour physical activity that they would like for you all to have each and every day. And then that 1 hour prior to bedtime, we ask that you power down so that your brain can start slowing down and not thinking about everything that you have to do, or what homework assignment, or what's due in 2 weeks of that test that's coming up. So you can actually get that full amount of rest and relaxation and be prepared for the next day.
Well, we are actually almost at the end, but I do want to ask one. There was a question before we wrap things up, because I don't want to keep you all longer. Dr. Kane has always been advocating that we go longer than an hour. He wanted to do an hour and a half at least, but we want to respect your time. But Can any of you comment on the increasing number of children with ADHD diagnosis and treatment?
So I think more families are aware of the ability to screen their children. Also, we have to understand ADHD is a multifactorial type of disease. We've kind of looked at it, it started out as this was the bad kid. That was, what families thought years ago. But we recognize it's more than just that. There is some rewiring of the brain that occurs that can contribute to this. There's trauma that can contribute to this. There are environmental causes that contribute to this. And oftentimes, families don't have those coping skills to be able to deal with those things, those external things that contribute to this child's rewiring of the brain and changes in behavior. And so now we're dealing with a group of kids who are now being diagnosed with ADHD. And this is, I don't know that the numbers are so much worse than before, so much as that we are identifying better. And I get families all the time who delayed getting their child diagnosed because they didn't want them labeled. But now this child has failed multiple grades, and now we're sitting at the table having this conversation. And so I think you have more awareness in our community as it relates to this diagnosis, just as you do other diagnoses, the other A word, autism and things of that nature. We're screening more. We have more of awareness of what that is. And families used to think, oh, you were just stamping a label on folks. But no, it's not that. It's more than that. There's actual science to what we do.
I think we see a lot of mistrust among certain communities as it relates to ADHD and autism diagnosis. I don't know if you guys have any commentary on that. Anybody, feel free to comment on it.
Well, I'll just speak to the elephant in the room as it relates to autism. You have a lot of families I deal with on a daily basis, families who choose not to vaccinate because they believe that autism is caused by vaccines. That has been disproved time and time again. There have been multiple studies that have tried to duplicate that original research, and they've come up with nothing. In addition, that original research was discredited, and the Lancet withdrew their approval of that original research because it was deemed that the researcher had falsified data. Plus, if you read the actual research, the data set was very small. Any scientific person will know that you have to have a certain data size in order for research to be valid. And also, there are a significant number of children who have autism that are not vaccinated. I have a lot of them in my practice who've never been vaccinated, and they are autistic. And so it is very difficult to make the case that this equals this, when actually autism is a multifactorial disease. And it is important that people understand that it's more than just, it's environmental. There's some genetic component to it. There are a lot of other factors.
And I know a lot of people comment. I heard it when I was seeing the pediatrics and that pediatric patient. And that was some of the parents, particularly the Black parents, that were saying that Black boys in particular were being mislabeled or misdiagnosed with ADHD, and they thought it was a level of conspiracy. And I don't know if you guys know anything different that can be added to that to disprove that, whatever, or you want to comment on it. Feel free to do so, but I do understand that if we haven't had the kind of research to comment on that, I understand you couldn't comment on it.
Go ahead, Dr. Pope.
One thing I would say is when we come into contact with parents or guardians who have concerns about how a child is being labeled, even if it's ADHD, autism, or even with asthma sometimes, because it may affect them later on in life for whatever they may want to do. For instance, a lot of people are really, really concerned when they know that their child wants to go into the military, for instance. But we try to be encouraging. We try to be supportive. And we try to give them education and information that gives them the facts. And then we can also, when we're doing our screenings and we're doing our assessments, we sit down and we have these conversations and say, this is what we're asking. So the symptoms and the signs that we're talking about, either you brought them to us or somebody else saw them and brought them to you for the reason that you're bringing them to us as clinicians for the assessment. And it is just that. It's an assessment to see where we need to go with this to assist the child in whatever issue they're having.
I think the mistrust that I saw the most was coming out of when it was within the diagnosis was done just within the school system. So when I addressed it, a lot of times I would go and get an independent or a person outside the school system, whatever psychological services that was available to those patients, and have a second opinion on it. And so that, and a lot of times it proved that the child did have that particular diagnosis, whether autism or ADHD. But I think they got a lot more comfort when they were outside the school system because they felt there was a certain bias within the school system. Not saying that is or wasn't or ain't or whatever it may be, but there was a certain bias felt to be within the school system. So we had to accommodate those parents because in the best interest of the child, you wanted to make sure that the parents were comfortable with the diagnosis, plus or minus.
And so that reiterates the point. It's very important to have a relationship with your pediatrician or family practitioner,
Exactly.
to be able to get to the bottom and get to the facts and get your questions answered.
Right. I appreciate it.
And the other thing that I was going to say about the school system, we do not diagnose like mental health concerns. So there is a process for a student to be placed on an IEP. And then based on the results of the testing that the school psychologist and the school social worker does for that student, that will determine what exceptionality they have. That exceptionality may be emotionally behavioral disturbed, right? It may be intellectual disability. It may be autism, right? But as far as like ADHD, like a mental health diagnosis, we don't do that. However, based on the screening of that student, it's determined what exceptionality that student has in order for them to get an IEP. But
I think some of the parents, sometimes what they have to do is make sure the person that's discussing that to the parent need to make sure that they understand and convey the right message, that this is not a diagnosis. This is a screening or whatever, because I've seen circumstances where those parents said, this is what they told me she has, and they were adamant about that person describing his or her child or their child as having that particular diagnosis. And I'm going, they're not qualified to make that diagnosis. But I just want to make sure parents know that they should get an appreciation that you guys, as you just said, the public school system is not making that diagnosis, and that we have to move further into the process to assign that diagnosis to a child.
Well, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. I really appreciate all of you have really enlightened our audience, and there's so much more to this conversation. And parents, as you're ready for your children to go back to school, I hope you've gotten some good information from our guests tonight. Now that we are at the end of the show, we do like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. Maybe it's something that you wanted to say and you just didn't get a chance to squeeze it in. So I'm gonna go the opposite direction. And Dr. Roll, I'm going to start with you this time. What are your final thoughts as we end tonight's discussion?
Make sure you have a healthcare provider that you can trust, that you can have conversations with, that you and your child can build a relationship with. It is very important for your child's health, as well as your sanity in the long run, because we are partners in your child's care and we're here to help.
Thank you. Dr. Pope, what about you?
One thing we didn't really get a chance to touch on was medication authorization forms. And I know the Department of Health and the Duval County Public School System school nurses are always reaching out to ask us as clinicians to partner with the parents to be able to get those school forms done. So just be mindful if you have a child that has a medical issue that may cause an emergency in the school, if you have a child who needs medications in the school, and these are things like asthma, seizures, and allergies to specific foods or medications, make sure you go ahead and speak to your child's clinician to get that paperwork in, because that will need to be documented for the school system.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Pope, because people don't think about there are children who have medical issues that go to school every day, and they have to work hand in hand, the faculty and the school health nurse and their clinicians. So it takes a team, right, to take care of that child. And Katrina, this is your first time. I hope we didn't scare you and you won't be back. But what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's discussion?
Absolutely. So I'll be back. The earlier the intervention, the better the outcome. All right. And I know you hear that a lot from the physical perspective, but also from the mental health perspective. Parents, it's okay if your child is not okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of at all. And so when you see those different things kind of manifest themselves that are alarming to you, reach out to your schools, let them know if they're seeing the same things manifest, and just know that we have support available in our school system, again, at no cost to you as a parent. So the earlier the intervention, the better the outcome, and just know our overall goal is to meet the needs of the whole child, every student, every classroom, every day.
And real quick, in that, those free services, how do they access those? Who do they ask at their school?
Their school counselor. So they may call them their guidance counselor, but they're called school counselors. So if you see that your child is showing symptoms of mental health concerns, then reach out to your school counselor to get a referral to full service schools.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank all of you. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all these beautiful ladies for coming on air and putting up with our discussions and my attempt at trying not to take away their beauty. The second thing I like to ditto Dr. Rowe, echo Dr. Pope, and applaud Ms. Taylor for their discussion as it relates to our public school effort in terms of providing services to our community. I would like also, didn't get a chance to talk about public school funding and what impact it may have on some of the services that these kids may need, like in K-1 and feeding them, what kind of lunches are available and so on and so on. That may be for another show, but I really want to thank you guys for coming on and helping Pause for the Truth become as successful as it has been and is.
Yes, and thanks to all of you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pause for the Truth. As we head into a new school year, I hope today's conversation reminded you that success in the classroom starts with strong minds and healthy bodies at home. Special thanks to our incredible guests, our pediatricians, Drs. Rowe and Pope, as well as our behavioral health director of Duval County Public Schools, Ms. Katrina Taylor, for sharing such valuable insights on how families can prepare their children physically, emotionally, and mentally for the year ahead. Remember, it's not just about grades or school supplies. It's about creating environments where children feel safe, supported, and seen. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to share it with a parent, teacher, or caregiver in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and as always, pause for the truth. Good evening.
We appreciate you spending time with us on Pause for the Truth. Ms. Jocelyn Turner and Dr. Rogers Kane are grateful for your support. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, catch us live on Twitch, and most importantly, subscribe on YouTube. A big shout out to Tyrone Jackson at Call Tyrone IT Services for keeping us connected. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more enlightening discussions. Thanks, and see you next week.